I've had and the cooperation I've had from so many people and the things I've learned from so many people. But I just am very thankful for all the help that has been given me. And I think that, in a sense, was, because I had always thought I loved teaching, and I thought I would go back to teaching. Well, and when I moved down here, we had a hired man. There were 7 in the family, and a big house, none of which I did very well with, but we managed. And Bob was always, he wasn't very much of a housekeeper, but he was very supportive of anything I did. His family was.
What do you think was the most challenging thing as a parent growing up?
Oh, I don't know, try to instill in them some of the faith that I have, the Christian background that is so important, I think. After all, rearing children is not a talent that we're all blessed with, and you wonder how many mistakes you've made along the way. But I am very grateful for my kids. Right now they're helping me, and by just taking care of things. And Sally comes home. I think you saw her came home last week loaded with groceries. She stops and gets the groceries and comes as often as she can.
What was it like for you to raise the kids here on a farm?
Well, I don't know, really. We supported them in all their activities. Bob was in the league. Well, Dave was too, but he gave it up after a year or two. Dave is very social, has lots of friends, but it did not include joining things. I guess he didn't like the obligations that can put on people. In fact, I've never been great on joining things. I think we're a society that needs people, but sometimes I think we've put just being a member of something is, unless you're going to be a good member, right? It's kind of a waste.
How do you think raising your children on a farm was different from parents who were raising their children in town or in Chicago?
Well, I think I have a lot of sympathy for parents who live in big cities and their only playground is the street, whereas here there are always chores. There was always something they had to do. They may not have liked it, but they never rebelled much. I always remember Dave saying that I suppose somebody had asked him what he wanted to do when he grew up, and he said, well, I want to be a farmer. But he said, I don't want as big a farm as my dad. I want to have time to go hunting. And so that's kind of, it's true. You're never done. It's just like being a homemaker. You're never done. You have left so many things undone. And as I look back for the last century, there are so many things I should have done and didn't do. And I thought of it not, I thought of it quite a few years ago. My favorite teacher in 8th grade was a lady from Hampshire. And she was the best, she gave me the best background in English and writing that I could have asked for. And she gave it to her class. And she just passed away about 5 years ago. And I always regretted that I never wrote to her and never went out of her way, my way. And she wasn't that far away. I could have gotten in touch with her. But I never got around to do it. And I guess that's what my life has been. Not getting around to do the things that I should have done. Thinking of others. That was one thing about going to the state hospital. I went every week. So I went every week at a certain time. And you know, if you do things at a certain time, you'll do them. But if you don't do them, and now that I don't drive, I used to go and visit a lot of people. I miss all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it all comes back to you. And the kindness they show you when you get to be so helpless.
What kinds of things would the kids help out with on the farm?
Oh, I don't really. There's so many details that, like with the dairy, feeding, cleaning, putting hay down, baling, all of these chores that we just take for granted just take time and energy. And I've noticed, especially since they gave up the dairy, that especially Bob looks so much more rested. And like he doesn't, you know, you knew the cows were waiting for you at 5 o'clock in the morning. And at 5 o'clock thereabouts. And maybe supper was waiting for you sometime, anytime. Dave and I have had an awful time getting back on a schedule as far as eating is concerned.
Mm-hmm. What was your father-in-law like, Bob's dad?
Just a very gentle, kind man. He was not what a friend of mine used to say, a take-charge person. He loved his home, he loved his family, and he loved the farm. And I know it would have broken his heart and his son's heart if they'd seen the farm being sold. But that's one of the crosses that you have to face.
Do you think they would have thought it better that you sold it to the township like you did, rather than for development?
Oh, I'm sure he would have preferred that. But I think he would have preferred to have had boys who were able to carry on. Even though this is an area in which farming is just prohibited. when you put in a crop and pay all that you have to pay for putting in that crop, and think of that, for a young man. Now, we were more fortunate, our boys were, in having a lot of equipment. A lot of it was pretty old, but it filled a need that they had, and they didn't have to start out from scratch like so many people did. But at the same time, when it's a losing proposition and you're working 16 hours a day, there's just no future in it.
How do you think development in this area has impacted the area?
Well, I look down over the fields and I think, how much of the new building that is going on is going to be lasting? I look at these malls that have sprung up all over. And the first ones that came are now practically extinct. We just saw the leveling of that West Side Mall in St. Charles. And that must hurt a lot to see all that good land just stand there deteriorating for the farmer who worked it for so many years. It must be very distressing. Would have been very. I'm sure he isn't around now to see it since that came, but I don't know why that mall didn't really do better. As I understand it, I haven't been there since they first opened the Charleston Mall. I understand that isn't doing too well.
It's having its ups and downs. They're struggling.
Of course, our economy's always been that way. But farm economy has been really down for a long time. And as I say, not much future in it.
Well, with all the stores, being built, and with all the people that come into this area and buy new homes and subdivisions, how has that changed the community, Lucinda?
It is deteriorating as far as the community is concerned. A community doesn't mean much anymore. If you have to go 15 miles to a private school with your kids and you live in a subdivision, you aren't much interested in the fellow who lives next to you. I found that out. See, I worked the cancer drive for years on a volunteer basis, and I tried to get workers from subdivisions, and it was murder. Nobody wanted to do it. And I'd say, well, it's a good way to get acquainted with your neighbors. Go and have a cup of coffee with them, or what have you. Most of them said they didn't know their neighbors. And they didn't add it, but they might very well have added, I really don't want to. Mm-hmm. Now, it was, I can't say a thing because I haven't been a very good neighbor either. But we were here if anybody wanted anything. They came, but that was the old way. And now everybody is so independent. And I just think the community spirit has suffered a great loss. And if I sound like a small town person, I am. I have always maintained there is no great quality in bigness. You must be running out of things to ask.
I got a whole nother page here. Let's see what else we got here. When you were raising your kids, did you have special family parties or family gatherings?
Oh yeah, for years we had a Muirhead reunion that averaged around 50 once a year. Well, I guess at one time it got to 100. But we went for a long time to the, are you familiar with the YW camp? Tuendui
Oh, up north
on 25.
25. Yeah, I've not been on the grounds, but I've heard about that. You know, when you drive by, you see the signs or something. Yeah.
I don't know what it's like now because I haven't been there in years, but we did go there for many years.
Mm-hmm.
I think we started in about 1930 and had a reunion every year. But then as the family grew up and went different ways and don't even know their cousins a few generations removed, and it isn't so much distance, I think it's just new interests. It's the same thing that's happened to the communities in general. And so we stopped having them.
Mm-hmm. When did you stop having them? In the 60s or something?
No, more like the late 80s or early 90s.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember when we had the last one. And I was secretary for years. I gave all that information to my nephew,
Oh, who was that?
Jack Muirhead. He lives in
Where does he live?
Bloomington.
Bloomington? Oh, downstate?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there are Muirheads everywhere now. His brother just married, his brother's daughter just married a Boston Celtic ball player. Quite a big affair, according to
Yeah.
Bill was just here this morning.
Yeah.
He's the younger brother.
Okay.
He lives up at the farm. But my brother had four boys and one girl.
Now, you had told us a bit about your grandmother, Beith, your grandma Beith, but then you had also mentioned to me the Kenyon family that apparently were descendants of Joseph Corron.
Who is that?
Kenyons.
You better spell it for me.
Kenyon.
Oh.
The Kenyon family.
Oh, they're related to the Corrons.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived in this area too, right?
Well, when Robert Corron came here, of course, there weren't many white people around here now, but the spring before, he came in October, Joseph Corron settled in South Elgin, Clintonville by name, if you're familiar with it, but and took out a big tract of land. And Joseph had 5 boys. Let's see. I think that's right. He had 3 that were born. One was an infant, one was 2, and one was 4, which sounds like something went through. Anyway, they died in 1840, and another son died in the Civil War, and another son died. I don't know if he had tuberculosis. I think he was sick for a while, but he died in his youth.
Mm-hmm.
So here's this man who had every hope of having a family pass on as Corrons, had one daughter. And that's where all the Kenyans from this area come from.
And then you've also talked about the Norton family. Now, did Flora marry a Norton, Bob's sister? So you're related to. So there's a connection between the Corron family and your family of several notable farm families in the community, including.
Well, isn't that what genealogy is all about? I mean, you stop to think, you can go through this cousin that I use the term loosely, but she was the offspring of my Bob's great-grandmother's first husband. And I just gotten acquainted with her in the last year or two, and she's gotten more stuff about Corrons. They all came from I think, Pennsylvania, Virginia area. And she's been gathering all this. And it just amazes me. But that's genealogy. We all go back to Adam and Eve. Maybe not willingly.
Do you remember your sister-in-law? Do you remember Flora?
Oh, yes.
Could you tell me a little about her?
Oh, she was a lovely person. Have you met Barbara? She married a Thames. They live up near Hampshire, but Barbara's just like her mother. Well, not really. She's more outgoing than Flora was. Flora was more like her dad, rather quiet and everything. But Barbara's been teaching for years, and that kind of makes people a little bit obnoxious at times. They all have a tendency to want to run the show. Here I am doing all the talking.
And who did Flora marry? What was his full name? Do you remember?
Dexter Norton.
Mm-hmm. And were they married here in the house?
Yes. Flora was married here. Jane and Bob were married here. And I'm not sure, I think Cal thought it, but I think Grandfather Corron's Adelia was married here. The house was built, so it was a show place at that time. They were probably married here. But they moved to Iowa. And so far I've had no luck at all getting in touch with that descendants of that family.
Oh, with Adelia's branch of the family?
Well, see. What was it you wanted to know?
Well, I was intrigued by the fact that several couples were married here in the house. What room were they married in?
Well, Flora was married in there, and Bob and Jane were married in there. Now, Sally was married in there too.
And how do you describe that room, Lucinda?
Room? It's just the nicest room in the house, but it's not easy to heat, but it's an awfully good place to store all your Christmas presents. We got all the Christmas junk down in there now. And it's just too cold.
Yeah.
See, there's no basement under it. And if you don't, and you've got 5 windows. Just to say nothing of the 3 doors.
But visually, how would you describe the room in terms of what makes it such an elegant room to hold a wedding in? How would you describe that to people?
Well, I think because it's so light, you can take a look at it and see, except you maybe get a whiff of cold air. But you can look at it and see why you would think it was. And it was the biggest, probably the biggest room, because most of our rooms are about, till you got all your equipment in, I thought this was a pretty good sized room. And Bob, for years, wanted to take out, he was always talking about it, take out the wall in between here and make the dining room and living room one. Well, I'm glad he didn't. It's a much warmer house than if we'd had all that to heat. Also, the dining room has always been kind of special. We had a lot of family dinners, and not anymore. Time marches on.
Now, the room over here, has this primarily been a guest bedroom?
Yeah, it was a, yeah, I have taken over because stairs are a little out of my realm now.
Mm-hmm.
But and the fact that there's no bathroom in the room did not make it ideal. And Bob was always bringing somebody in and showing them how they could move the stairway and make that a bathroom off the room. But nobody ever agreed with him. So it never was done.
Okay.
But I don't think it would have worked very well. The ceilings are so high, and everything is difficult to do. And I guess probably from the historic standpoint, if they want to deal with the historic, it's better that they haven't done too much. See, actually nothing has been changed, except, I guess you'd say, the floors and the porch out here.
Mm-hmm. They put another layer of flooring over the, like,
Yes.
the thinner oak flooring,
I think it's an oak
I would
flooring.
guess, yeah. In one of the articles I was reading, it talks about a particular room that was Bob Corron's sanctuary.
It's what?
I think it was an office or something that was.
Oh, that's what we've got the computer in now.
Is that back that way?
Yeah, it's got a big bookcase in it. Grandma Corron always used it as a kind of a, I guess, an offspring of a summer kitchen. She'd put things in there. And I can't remember what they had in the bookcases. We've got books. We've got books of everything. I think Bob had almost a complete set of the Zane Greys. You know Zane Grey?
Yes.
Oh, you grew up on Zane Grey.